The NHL has trended closer to a two-goalie league in recent years. It's not as common to see one starter playing upwards of 70 games per season anymore. Elite goaltenders are hard to find, and when teams don't have the one, they can try for a more balanced crease with two very good goaltenders. This year's playoff field features a mix of both approaches. No one started as much as Juuse Saros in Nashville with 64 starts in 75 games, after getting tapped to play back-to-back games this weekend. He's played a league-leading 84% of the Predators' tilts, and is on pace to reach 70 starts if this pattern continues. After him, it's Jacob Markstrom at 80%. Thatcher Demko has played 77% of the Canucks' starts in Vancouver's quest to reach the playoffs. Andrei Vasilevskiy matched that rate in Tampa Bay, starting 58 of 75 games. Pittsburgh's a little trickier. Tristan Jarry has started 73% of the Penguins' games, but now that he's week to week, Casey DeSmith may start round 1. If Jarry returns, he could take the crease again as long as his partner isn't thriving. A similar situation has developed for the Hurricanes, with Frederik Andersen sustaining an injury in Colorado this weekend. The share of the Canes' postseason games between goalies obviously depends on the starter's health. Darcy Kuemper's earned a nice workload behind a stacked Avalanche team, with 69% of the starts. Sergei Bobrovsky's bounce-back year offered him the starting share as well, though he probably has one of the shortest leashes this postseason, and could see more of a rotation with Spencer Knight if his play slips. Igor Shesterkin is a bit lower, at 64% to the starts, but the Rangers' net is far from a shared tandem. That percentage is only lower due to injury. He is unquestionably the bona fide starter. The rest of the goalie tandems, either in a playoff position or still vying for the postseason, are much more equal in their usage. The Capitals have Vitek Vanecek and Ilya Samsonov, while Boston has Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. Shift to the West and there's Jake Oettinger, Braden Holtby, and Scott Wedgwood in Dallas. Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen primarily compose the Oilers' net. In St. Louis, it's Ville Husso and Jordan Binnington. The Kings have options in Jonathan Quick and Cal Peterson. And Minnesota went from a crease with Cam Talbot and Kaapo Kähkönen to a rotation between the former and line acquisition Marc-Andre Fleury. For some teams, injuries have forced their workload distributions. That's the leading cause for Vegas and Toronto, with injuries to Robin Lehner and Jack Campbell earlier this year. For others, despite season-long usage, they have a clear idea who their starters will become playoffs. There may be some questions for the rest, however. The Capitals don't have that bona fide starter they can lean on. Both of their goalies have allowed more goals than expected this season. Volatility in net can once again rear its ugly head in the playoffs in Edmonton, too. The Wild don't have a plan yet either, according to head coach Dean Evason. We haven't talked about it at all. Like we haven't. You know, we haven't talked about it with Billy Guerin. We haven't talked about as a coaching staff, Minnesota's bench boss explained. I know it's cliché, but it's game by game, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. For now, Evason and his staff talk about it after each and every game, and we try to make the right decision when it comes to their goalie rotation. The silver lining, he explained, for us and for our hockey club is both guys are playing real well. As much as a team may lean on a rotation in the regular season, the playoffs are a different animal. Mindsets can shift and approaches can change. So what should be expected of these teams with a shared net this postseason? Looking back at past seasons can give us a better indication of what path these teams are likely to follow. There is important context for every team's goaltending situation that can't simply be captured in percentages of playing time alone. We see that in this year's crop of tandems, too. Splitting the crease can represent that perfectly balanced rotation of goaltenders like the Wild have this year. That makes them an ideal comparable for the Icelanders of years past, whether the partnership of Semyon Varlamov and Thomas Greiss, or the latter with Lehner. In both instances, the team did designate a playoff starter. Lehner started every single game in 2018-19, while Varlamov started 19 of 22 the following year. The only changes in goal that postseason were purely performance-based. A more equal distribution in starts doesn't necessarily mean an equal rotation either. It can signify injury woes in the blue paint. Or it can represent trends in play if a starter falters and a backup steps up and earns more playing time. That's why a lower percentage of playing time in the regular season doesn't preclude them from taking over in the playoffs. Take the 2018-19 Avalanche. Philip Grubauer started less than his partner, Varlamov, but got hot at the right time, earning him every postseason start. No matter how or why a team doesn't have a bona fide number one in the regular season based on usage, that tends to change in the playoffs. Going back through the last 5 seasons, only a handful of teams that went into the playoffs with a shared crease in the regular season had somewhat of a rotation. But the context is key in each instance. Injuries forced the Penguins to divide time between Fleury and Matt Murray in the postseason in 2016-17. The latter was set to be the starter, but he missed the early rounds after getting hurt. Murray took back the crease over shortly after returning, when the veteran faltered in Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Final. Grubauer was poised to backstop the Avalanche through their playoff run in 2019-20, when a leg injury ended his season after 7 starts. That's when Pavel Francouz took over for a few games, until he went down with injury too, forcing third-string Michael Hutchinson to start the last 3 games. The Bruins, on the other hand, mixed up their starter in 2019-20 after Tuukka Rask departed the bubble. The Devils' decisions in 2017-18 were performance-based in their short series against the Lightning. Keith Kinkaid, after a strong second half of the regular season, allowed 4.7 goals above expected in 2 games. That brought Corey Schneider back into the fold. The Panthers were in a similar situation last year, also against Tampa Bay. Bobrovsky struggled, allowing 5.6 goals above expected to open the playoffs. His 1B, Chris Driedger, didn't fare much better. That led to rookie Spencer Knight finishing off the series with 2 starts. That pattern holds true going back 5 years further as well. Teams tend to tap one goaltender to start the majority, if not all, playoff games. There are only a few outliers along the way, with some semblance of a closer split of games during the postseason. So what's the point of sharing the crease in the regular season if the idea isn't to in the playoffs? There are a number of benefits. One is that it ensures a team doesn't run their goaltender into the ground before the most crucial time of year. Balancing workloads ahead of time can ensure a starter is well rested for a playoff run that can be upwards of 20 games, on top of a challenging regular season. With any decision, there's always some sort of risk or drawback. Here, it could be that a goalie isn't prepared for the cadence of playoff hockey, whether it's the readiness of such high-intensity hockey in a short span, or having to play any back-to-back games after rarely doing so in the regular season. That could be due to an overall lack of experience, especially early in a goalie's career, seeing as most levels before the NHL don't play as long of a season. But with that risk as the benefit, there's a fresh, rested, and capable 1B at the ready if the playoff starter struggles, who can handle more than just a minimal role of a clear-cut backup. That's pivotal in case of injury, too. Just look at the 2016-17 Penguins having Fleury when Murray went down. This year, that benefit is in place for a handful of teams, between Fleury and Talbot in Minnesota, as well as Ullmark and Swayman in Boston. Coaches may feel the same about Binnington with his championship experience behind Husso, and Quick with Peterson, too. Having the choice of a starter between quality goaltenders can be a good problem to have. Of course, having a shared crease doesn't always mean there's an ideal amount of security in net. It can be a sign that neither can shake it as a number one. The Smith-Koskinen tandem stands out in that regard, although Stuart Skinner, as a third string, does provide another option. The same holds true for the Capitals after they didn't acquire a goalie at the line. Still, no matter the regular season rotation, even an equal, every other game approach, one goaltender tends to emerge as the playoff starter. And if that goalie can't get into a rhythm and backstop their team deep into the postseason, there's another netminder who can step up and assume that workload. So while there are a few intriguing balanced tandems around the league, they likely won't be sharing much longer. Data via Hockey Reference and Evolving Hockey. The Athletic's Saad Youssef contributed to this story.